Well, we're back for the Student Award. For this ceremony, I am with Jean-Paul Thomas. You're the head of the Transport, Insurance and Companies Department at France Assureurs. We'll keep the suspense up, although we know it's a young woman who won. Jean-Paul, please explain how the award is given and tell us about its history, how it was and when it was created, and what's the underlying goal. Well, I know that time is short, so I'll try to be very brief, but in 2015, the organizing committee of the Parimat conference thought it would be good to highlight our topics, the various matters in terms of insurance, law firms, and legal experts via an award that will be given maybe not to research work, but at least to a master's degree student, not necessarily in maritime insurance, but also maritime shipping and economic aspects. So since 2015, we've been giving a special student award. Several students have already come on stage. Now a young woman is going to come on stage in a minute. The award, well, the way we're organized is that sometimes we get a large number of theses. Sometimes we had 15 or 20 theses to read. So we have a reading committee. So the theses are read, as Pascal explained, read by volunteers. And there's also maybe not a scientific, but at least a structured approach with an analysis template so that the readers have a shared view of the theses, and the theses that had a minimum grade of 14 out of 20 that are sent on to the jury. Well, the jury changes based on availability. We had Patrick Deserf and Gaël Piet this year. So we read 2 theses. It was a small vintage, not in terms of quality, but in terms of quantity. We received 6 theses, and so we selected one. Pascal and Cézanne create a special rule with a voting procedure for the jury, but we always try to go for a consensus. So we always managed to agree on the thesis. So we look at the subject, but the quality of the writing and the explanations, because this is a student's work, it's fairly academic, so you shouldn't neglect the quality of the writing. The decisive criterion in the choice, I wouldn't say there was just one criterion, but that's what I said, the shared view between the relevance of the subject, the way it was handled, and also the quality of the explanation. Also the research work with all the references. There was also a historical aspect that was quite interesting. So it was all these cumulative factors. There's not just one decisive criterion. So drum roll now. The award goes to Solène HUBERT for her thesis about the handler's responsibility. I wanted to name the readers. They might even be in the room. So Stéphane Rocher and Jean-Philippe Matet, who agreed to read this thesis that was recognized by the jury. I'll ask Solène HUBERT to please join us on stage. Also with Loïc Roulette, who is a lecturer for transport at Marseille University. But yes, I didn't say that yet. You wrote your thesis as part of your Law and Maritime Activity Management's master's degree at Marseille, a thesis on the goods handler's responsibility and liability, as Jean-Paul said. So that's just the title, but that's not enough. What is this thesis about? I'm sorry. I'm checking that you can hear me. The thesis is about the goods handler's responsibility as part of handling operations, so simply loading and unloading operations on board ships. The microphone's perfect. Don't touch it. We can hear you, don't worry. That's what I meant. We can hear you perfectly. And so there can sometimes be damages that are caused, damage to the goods or to the ship. So that's what I talked about. There's a special liability regime about it, which is mostly dealt with by the transport code in France. Why is it so complicated, so delicate? What are the difficulties? Well, it's a specific regime because it's dualistic. The handler's liability can depend on the type of handling operations carried out when the damage occurred. So either there's a proven fault liability or full liability. And so it's a fairly interesting subject for anyone who may be involved in litigation, whether it was decided settled out of court or decided by a civil court. Well, the case law is not fully proven and clear-cut here, and so looking at these liability matters might be interesting. Your personal opinion, because dockers, we're really talking about dockers, they have a lot of responsibility or small responsibility. What's your take on that? Well, it's difficult to say yes or no, to have a clear-cut answer, because the case law has looked at a number, used a number of notions that are found in the law to balance the interests of the handler to limit their responsibility as much as possible and the interest of the victim of those damage. We would like the exact opposite, so to have full liability for the handler in the simplest way possible. So in some cases, case law was fairly severe and hard on the handler. There were some cases that showed that the liability was extended beyond the letter of the law by the judge, and in other cases, the judge was almost too lenient, too much in favor of the handlers, because they put them in a more favorable situation than the shipper, whereas the initial aim of the legislator was to have an alignment between the two liability regimes. Well, congratulations. I think you deserve an applause. Well, Loïc, Roulette, maybe a quick word. Solène's one of your students. Well, just a few words to congratulate Solène, who handed in a wonderful thesis on a topic that might seem fairly traditional, it seems. But if you take the angle followed by Solène with dual responsibility, this is very interesting. Maybe a quick word to say that this is the 5th time that a student from Aix-Marseille University was recognized with this award, and we are very happy of that. The transport department of Aix-Marseille has two sub-departments, IFORTAL and CDMT, one for aviation, one for maritime and transport and terrestrial transport. So we have two levels, master's degree and a PhD level. So for maritime transport, for air transport, and for land transport. And just to tell you that we really focus on the vocational aspect of our training. And that's why, on top of having mostly professional lecturers and not academics on our faculty, all our students are on work-study programs, and so they spend a week at the university and 2 weeks in a company. So this is a call to all people who might be looking for great quality sandwich course students like Solène. Well, they are here for you. Thank you very much. And congratulations again, Solène. This is time for a lunch break now, so please proceed downstairs for lunch, and we'll be back here exactly at 2.